So without further ado, I'd like to invite Tobias Picker to come up for a brief conversation to talk about his music. Tobias. I feel, welcome, first of all.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here. I felt like in that song cycle, we were all united emotionally, and it's really, really exquisite. I wanted to ask you what inspired you to set those poems, and how did you hear them musically, or how did you get the idea that you wanted to turn them into song?
Well, they're irresistible words, and they're all about love. So they're some of the most beautiful. Well, they come from Pablo Neruda's 100 love sonnets. There are 3 of the sonnets. The most famous of the 100 is the last one that I set, 17, it was about 20 years ago that I came upon them, and I just they said things in words that I could only say in music.
And did you know you wanted to do 3 of them? What was
No, it just I started reading them all, and then I actually said 4 of them. There's a 4th one that I did later, but you know, if there was time, I would do all 100.
When you're setting up poems like that, what is the first step? I mean, do you hear melodies in them? Or what is your process like starting?
Actually, the music starts in the orchestra, or in the piano in this case. It always starts there and grows from there, and then blossoms into song from there. So the melody comes out of the harmony.
Mm-hmm.
I start with the piano.
Mm-hmm.
Brahms songs are my model. So there's always the piano is always playing independently of the voice, and that's what the kind of text setting that I aspire to.
You can hear that in these songs. I was talking to Michael at the intermission how the vocal line comes out of the instrumental. It's really like chamber music, and that seems probably demanding for singers too. I'm not a singer, but it's like he understands the piano part, and it does feel like a collaborative.
It's a lot to absorb for the listener, and some ears can't. And once when one of my operas was done in California, I saw a review and it said all the melodies were in the orchestra, not in the. And they couldn't hear that many things going on at the same time.
Mm.
The car aria from An American Tragedy. Clyde Griffiths, who's just started working in his rich uncle's shirt factory in upstate New York. He's the poor relation. Has finished his first day at work, and he sees his spoiled rich cousin Gilbert going off in his motor car with these beautiful girls to a party, and he sees them get into the car at the factory, and wants to be him, and he wants to have a motor car, and he wants the American dream, but he goes about it the wrong way. Lenny. I was asked to write a piece having to do with Lenny's 100th birthday by a pianist that I didn't know, and who'd asked dozens of composers to write them little pieces in tribute to Leonard Bernstein, and I didn't really want to do that. But although to write a piece for them because I didn't know them, and I didn't also like to write a piece that was one of 40 pieces. So I must someday tell you what Morton Feldman told me about the length that pieces should be and why, but that's another discussion. But I did write the piece finally, but I just didn't want to give it to this other pianist, and Marc Peloquin had such a keen interest in my work that I decided to give it to him, and so it's written for Marc. It was meant for Marc. I never even heard the other pianists play.
It's wonderful to hear you play Old and Lost Rivers. It's a piece that's so identified with you among many others, and that's your instrument.
My prelude in C-sharp minor. Only in this case, D-flat major, but that's very cool.
But you seem happy to play it, I think.
Yeah, at least I know it.
I think Rachmaninoff at a certain point got tired of playing that prelude.
Well, I'm not tired of playing it yet, but I have played it a lot.
Uh-huh.
It's also very popular at memorial services. The Blue Hula was the middle movement of a 10-minute piece I wrote for a new music group in New York in the early 80s called the New York New Music Ensemble. And I wrote it when I was living in Hawaii in 1980 on commission, and it's scored for Puro plus percussion group. They commissioned a lot of pieces, New York New Music Ensemble, and this I extracted the middle movement because it's jazz, and I haven't written a lot of jazz, but this is one of the jazz pieces that I wrote, beautifully played, I must say, by Marc. Really beautifully played, jazzily played with elegance. Four etudes for Ursula. It was written for Ursula Oppens, who has been the doyenne of contemporary pianists, contemporary music pianists for the past 50 years in New York, and for whom I've written most of my piano music, and who's recorded most of it. There is an album of my piano music that Ursula recorded. We recorded Keys to the City, my second piano concerto, a 2-piano arrangement of it that I made. But the rest is her playing solo piano pieces, and it's on a Vergo, WERGO recording and they named the album Keys to the City. 4 pieces, the 4 etudes are on that. I wrote them for her in '96 when I was writing Emmeline.
I know you have a new opera that's coming, that's being premiered. It was supposed to be premiered last year.
Yeah, Awakenings is next June in St. Louis. Based on Oliver Sacks's book about the encephalitis lethargica pandemic, which overlapped the 1918 influenza pandemic and was related. It was going on at the same time, and probably 5 million people died of this sleeping sickness. Well, he met these elderly survivors of the sleeping sickness in 1969 when he was a young resident at Mount Carmel Hospital in the Bronx, and discovered that they were frozen in time and physically frozen like statues. And he experimented with L-Dopa on them and brought them back to life for one summer. And they could do everything. They were back in life, but it didn't last. And most of them had to go off their old dopa and back. It's a Sleeping Beauty allegory, and we weave Sleeping Beauty into the opera actually too.
What were some of the side effects of the dopa?
Side effects were terrible tics, and he describes one patient as having had a symphony of tics, and he always exaggerated about symptoms and things, but you could see them on film, and they couldn't be still. They couldn't sit still, and I identified with that because I have Tourette's syndrome very strongly with that, and I feel what that's like. But I haven't been asleep for 40 years that I'm aware of.
And so, what made you think of turning that into an opera? That particular.
Well, Oliver Sacks and I were friends, and he was very interested he attended my operas, and he was very interested in one of my pieces called the Encantadas, which is for narrator and orchestra, and I tried to persuade him to perform it, but he was too shy to ever do it, and somehow we got to talking about I thought his writing was so beautiful, so poetic, even though he was a scientist. He was also a very lyrical writer, and I told him that I'd like to make an opera about one of his books. He wrote many, many fascinating books, and he suggested Awakenings. And it took many, many years to get an opera company interested. First, I got a ballet company interested, and I wrote it as a ballet for the London-based Rambert Dance Company. And finally, Jim Robinson, who is the artistic director of Opera Theatre St. Louis, who directed Fire Shut Up in My Bones, which is having its last performance tonight, and Porgy and Bess at the Met, commissioned it for his company, Opera Theatre St. Louis. So it was postponed because of COVID, and it'll have its premiere in June of 2022.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Tobias. Thank you.